The year was 2010. I was in high school at this time, and naturally, these were very formative years for me. This was when I met many lifelong friends that I still talk to this day, and when I discovered a lot of the things that I would be passionate about all the way up to adulthood: acting, video editing, and of course, anime. I had seen and gone into a few anime at this point, namely Pokemon, Digimon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, and Dragon Ball Z. I knew that anime was something that I liked, but if anyone were to ask me what my favorite anime was, they'd more than likely roll their eyes, because it was either the most mainstream possible thing you can imagine, or something very much made for children. Despite the fact that I always had a natural soft spot for the quote-unquote anime style, I really didn't have a lot of experience with it. In every way, I was a novice who was dipping his toe into the pool. This all changed one Saturday night. While watching Adult Swim, I came across a certain anime. That anime was Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. Last month was Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood's 15th anniversary, and I felt as though it was appropriate to talk about it, considering it is my favorite TV show of all time. To this day, Brotherhood is often cited as one of, if not the best anime ever made, and for good reason. I remember when this anime was airing, it seemed like the only thing anyone wanted to talk about. It was huge, and also responsible for getting so many new people into anime, me included. Quite frankly, Brotherhood is a masterpiece, which is why I find it so surprising that now this opinion isn't as universal as it once seemed. With every day that passes, it seems like more and more people are coming out of the woodwork, expressing grievances and issues that they have with Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. And this is kind of mind-boggling to me. Back in the early 2010s, it felt like saying anything bad about Brotherhood was nothing short of heresy. Like, how could you find anything wrong with this show? It's amazing. But in this day and age, especially with the rise of the all-consuming entity that is social media, people are feeling more and more comfortable expressing thoughts that don't exactly mesh with the popular opinion. Some even going so far as to say that the 2003 version of Fullmetal Alchemist is superior to Brotherhood. And look, I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of the 2003 version, but I can also understand why someone might feel this way. For anyone who doesn't know, the main difference between Brotherhood and the 2003 anime is that while Brotherhood is for the most part pretty true to the original manga's narrative and tone, being a tried and true action shonen, the 2003 version makes a massive departure from this, creating its own much darker and dramatic story where, well, not everything works out how you might expect. From this perspective, I think it's easy to see how in comparison, Brotherhood can come off as the more childish and simple-minded series, whereas 2003 is more thought-provoking and all-around cooler and deeper. I totally see where people are coming from when they express this sentiment. So today, I think it's worth asking, is Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood really the greatest anime of all time? Well, to answer this, I think we need to understand why exactly this anime is as highly regarded as it is. Like I said before, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood very closely follows the original manga written and illustrated by Hiromu Arakawa. And this alone, I feel, is a huge reason why Brotherhood gets the praise it does, because the original story that was crafted by Arakawa is beloved. In case you don't know the story, Fullmetal Alchemist follows Edward and Alphonse Elric, two brothers who are obsessed with the science of alchemy, basically this anime's power system. It allows the user, through equivalent exchange, to manipulate matter. With alchemy, characters are able to create weapons, transform the environment, and even heal people. After a, quite frankly, traumatizing experience trying to bring their mom back from the dead, the brothers are left in shambles. Ed having lost both his arm and leg, and Al having lost his entire body. His soul now bound to a hulking suit suit of armor. After this incident occurs, Ed and Al set out on a journey to uncover the fabled Philosopher's Stone, a legendary relic that is supposedly able to grant unimaginable power to any alchemist who possesses it, in hopes that they can use the stone to get their original bodies back. And already, this story is able to forge such an emotional bond between the two main characters. Alphonse can't eat or sleep, which means he is naturally isolated from those around him. Can you imagine having to spend every single night alone, tortured by your own thoughts, unable to go to sleep? This is what Al has to live with, and what drives Ed in his search to help his brother. Obviously, what I just told you though is not even close to the full plot of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. It's really just the inciting incident. And the reason for this is because summarizing the entire plot that unfolds after this point is incredibly difficult. The story begins with Ed and Al searching for the Philosopher's Stone. However, as the narrative continues, it begins to branch out and expand to more and more characters, until eventually it feels like Ed and Al are just one piece of a massive puzzle that encompasses not only all of Amestris, but the entire history of the country. And I think this is what makes Arakawa's writing so alluring. Her ability to incorporate a massive sense of scale that gives the story such a sense of grandiosity. She's able to make what's happening feel so huge and unprecedented, but is also able to do so in a way that doesn't overwhelm the audience, drip feeding us little pieces of information that helps put the pieces together, but leaves enough mystery for us to want to keep watching. We're witnessing a conspiracy hundreds of years in the making that encompasses all of these different characters, and it's here where Hiromu Arakawa's stellar character writing is able to fully shine. I don't think there's a single character in Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood that I actively dislike. They're just all so entertaining and cool in their own ways that make me like them for different reasons. And nowhere do I feel this is better illustrated than the main antagonist group, the Homunculi. I would be willing to bet that anyone who has watched Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood probably has an affinity for at least one of the Homunculi. Sure, there's probably a lot of people who just like all, or at least most of them, but considering the fact that they're all based on one of the 7 deadly sins, it makes sense that we'd latch onto one in particular, given that every person has their own vices that they can relate to. And it helps that each homunculi is written in a way that makes them so uniquely and unapologetically them. And that's just how every character is, really. Everyone is just so well defined, but something that I love the most about the characters in Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood is how it feels like all of them have their own creed and compass that they live by. Ed, for example, is relentless when he has a goal in mind. However, he also refuses to pursue his goals in any way that he's not okay with. He never stoops to what he believes isn't right. On the other hand, you have a character like Ling Yao, who is much more willing to get his hands dirty and maybe even do incredibly foolish things if it means that he can save the people of his country. Then, of course, there's Scar, whose main goal is justice for the Ishvalan people. However, his methods change drastically as he continues to grow through the series, and really every character goes through their own growth, both literally and emotionally. And one of the best examples of this is Ed and Al's father, von Hohenheim. When the series first begins, it's really unclear whether or not Hohenheim is a good person or not. After all, he basically abandons his family, and even after Ed and Al's mom dies, he still doesn't show up until years down the line. It's really easy to see Hohenheim as kind of a bad guy, and it certainly doesn't help that he just so happens to look exactly like the actual bad guy. However, once you get to know him, you start to understand why it is that he's so distant. Considering the fact that he himself is not exactly 100% human, it's easy for him to feel separated from everyone else around him. And what doesn't help is the fact that over the course of his long life, he's seen humanity make the same mistakes over and over again. Humanity, in a lot of aspects, is, well, kind of pathetic. We're arrogant, destructive, and foolish creatures that do a lot of harm, not only to other living things, but even to ourselves. If we were to be visited by some kind of advanced alien race that had achieved lightspeed travel, I wouldn't be surprised if they viewed us as ants, not unlike Father does. And this is an aspect of humanity that Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood puts on full display. However, Brotherhood also shows us that being human can be beautiful. We can unite together for a single cause. We can reach out and offer a helping hand to someone who really needs it. And while, yeah, we do make mistake after mistake, we can also learn from these mistakes and keep living. The ultimate flaw of humanity is that we try to be more than what we are, which is just simple humans. And there's nothing wrong with just being human. To accept that we aren't perfect, that we do have flaws, and that regardless of those flaws, we are good enough. And it's this idea that Hohenheim clings to that lets him keep his faith in humanity. And this is where I want to talk about my favorite part of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. Ed finds himself in the portal of truth for a second time. And this time is different, because this time he sees Al's body, decrepit, starving, and only holding on by a thread. And after seeing this, Ed runs to Al, desperate to bring him through the portal with him. But unfortunately, this attempt to save his brother is in vain. And so instead, Ed makes Al a promise. He promises him that he will return for Al someday, no matter what. And after having rewatched this recently, it made me sob. Because to me, it says that no matter what horrible things we inflict on ourselves, we can come back from it. We can learn and we can make things right. And sure, you can say a message like that is too optimistic and maybe even a little unrealistic, and that the more bittersweet sentiment of the 2003 anime is more in line with how reality actually works. But I like that in Brotherhood, despite all the dark things that happen, despite all the pain that so many characters go through, there's a shimmer of light at the end of the tunnel, and they do get to achieve happiness. And so I ask again, is Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood really the greatest anime of all time? And my answer to that is probably not. Brotherhood isn't a perfect anime, it has its flaws, but I also wouldn't have it any other way than it's always been. It doesn't need to be the greatest anime of all time for it to matter. The only thing that matters is that after all these years, despite its flaws, it makes me, and probably countless others, feel the same way we did when we watched it 15 years ago. It might not be the best anime of all time, but Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood will always be my favorite anime of all time.